Get this. So, Z Squirrel, I think that's how you say it, Zeal Squirrel, uh, got this video here. This is from Oxford Union, and they have a lot of interesting guest speakers that talk to students. It's kind of like a TED Talk, but they sit down. It's not like an official stage. It's just like a sit down where they talk to intellectuals. Sometimes they have celebrities there for, that reason. But this really caught attention. So a Zionist fanatic at the Oxford Union angrily asked George Galloway if he's racist because of his opposition to the genocidal Israeli death cult and is appalled by the audience. Here is Galloway's response that gets the audience to applaud for him at the end. So George Galloway, who's a very famous, well-spoken outsider within British politics, he ran in a district in England there. He won that district. He's been very outspoken. He hosts a show, the mother of all talk shows. He's very, very outspoken when it comes to Israel, when it comes to corruption, when it comes to the scandals within the British government and parliament with that. And now, because of the onset slaughter of Palestinians that we're witnessing out in the open, and how the Zionist cult is losing momentum drastically, not cultivating as many people as they thought. This crazed Zionist kid is going to try and outsmart George Galloway, but George Galloway is going to fire back, and the audience is going to applaud him. So listen to this.
My question for you is, are you a racist?
By the way, his first question is, are you a racist? My second question is, when do I get to be part of a boy band like Harry Styles? I mean, come on. I'm sure some music industry, someone at a record label is going to watch this and be like, oh, he's a Zionist and he looks adorable. Of course we're going to get him a contract. And if he can't sing, that's what auto-tune's for. That's what half the singers do. But here's George Galloway in action, and this what makes him such a great person. Listen to this.
Why are you applauding that? What kind of people would applaud that? Am I a racist? You've sat through the last hour and a half of me speaking, and you're applauding someone asking me if I'm a racist? What kind of people are you? Or do you just applaud anything? Would you just applaud anything? You made a better job of it than your friend. I'll grant you that. Talking to me in a language I don't understand and then waving an Israeli flag in my face was not, I suspect, the finest moment that he will experience in what I hope is a long life in public affairs. I'll let you in on something you don't know. I'm one of the few people on the left in Britain who traveled the length and breadth of apartheid South Africa as an underground agent of the African National Congress led by Nelson Mandela, then in Pollsmoor prison in Cape Town. Therefore, the subject of apartheid is particularly important to me. The question of racism is particularly important to me. And in parenthesis, let me tell you this, that throughout the entirety of my time underground in South Africa under apartheid, every house I slept in, every dinner I ate, every car I drove in was provided by Jewish activists of the African National Congress. So Jews don't have to be on the side of apartheid. They don't have to be on the side of racism. Jewish.
And what we've seen is a lot of Jewish people don't agree with the Zionists. The Zionists are the ones that are trying to conflate Judaism to capture those people, and also use that as a deflection so that anyone that critiques them about a complete wipeout of a population is automatically considered anti-Semitic. Or in this case, it's apparently racist. I didn't know Zionism was a race. It's a skin color. I didn't realize that was a race that they're dealing with. That religion automatically assumes as a race. So only white people can be Jewish? Only certain people can be certain religions? That doesn't make sense. Religion is religion. Race is way different than religion. You can change different face.
Jewish heroes amongst my blood brotherhood, like Dennis Goldberg, who served 27 years on Robben Island in Paulsmoor prison, but who never was able to touch Mandela and his comrades because they were on one side of the apartheid prison wall, and he and a few other Jewish heroes of the African National Congress were on the other. Dennis Goldberg, Albie Sachs, Joe Slovo, Ruth First. Perhaps you've heard of these people. If you haven't, look them up. Jews don't have to be on the side of apartheid. They can stand up against it. And I say to those who imagine that they are friends of the state whose flag was just waved in my face, turn away from the racist apartheid ideology of Zionism. Turn back to where Jews were before the emergence and the hegemony of Zionism. The greatest people on the earth were Jews. The leaders of the socialist, communist, trade union, liberal, Enlightenment, throughout the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries were great Jews. Marx himself was a Jew. None of them believed that as Jews they should go and take somebody else's country and drive millions of them around the world as refugees. All of them would have turned their back against such an ideology. But because of my experience in South Africa, which included, by the way, being battered and bloodied by a Scottish South African policeman called Campbell. It's one of the reasons why I hate Alistair Campbell so much. In Gugulethu police station, in the Gugulethu township in Cape Town, although the policeman had eventually to wash my feet in public, in penitence. But that's another story. Because of my time in South Africa, because of the decades that I worked against apartheid in South Africa, do you imagine that I would turn up at a university and debate apartheid with a supporter from South Africa of the apartheid system? I'd rather punch him in the face than debate with him. Why? Because apartheid is a racist poison. It is the worst kind of fascism. And I would never debate with any supporter of South African apartheid. Why should I debate with a supporter of Israeli apartheid?
Man. That is a mic drop moment. That is what makes George Galloway such a fantastic person. And it just, even just using the facts of Jews throughout history that did not support this. That if you look at so many revolutionary people, even people like Albert Einstein, uh, there's a famous quote. I'm blanking on the exact quote, but there's a famous quote of Albert Einstein when it was asked about the formation of Israel, because it was around kind of that time period. Um, he didn't believe that. He didn't believe that a single soul nation should only accompany one religion or one faith or one group of people, one ethnicity. He didn't believe that. He didn't believe in the apartheid that's currently engulfing Palestinians. That is a racist apartheid. That they're going after Semites who are Palestinian. Palestinians are Semites. By definition, they are. And they're purposely doing that so that mostly Eastern Europeans, that's why they have Benjamin Milokovsky. That's his real name, not Netanyahu. They changed it to make him sound more Middle Eastern. But for Eastern Europeans to dominate that territory with the company of the surveillance state, the CIA, the Mossad regime, MI6, the British monarchy. Why do you think they're all entangled in the formation of Israel and the keeping of Israel? Is it because they feel sympathy for Jews? Or is it because they're using it purposely as a tactic to establish this kind of multilateral military occupation towards the Palestinians, but also to the rest of the Middle Eastern territories? You notice how all the times that we fought in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Lebanon, all these Middle Eastern territories, they're the same enemies as Israel. And notice how the terrorists that were claimed are so evil, so disgusting. That's why we got to hate all the Arab population. Those terrorist groups like ISIS and Al Qaeda, they're not fighting Israel. Isn't that kind of interesting? Even right now, the Houthis, the Houthis in Yemen, the poorest nation among all of them, are fighting back the Western imperialists for having this ethnic cleansing. The poorest nation going after the United States empire and Israel and the UK, going after them to defend the Palestinians, all the young children, the mothers, the sons, the daughters, the fathers, all the people that have massacred through this. They're not there to impose terrorism. That's brainwashed material for you to be on board with the imperialist state that has eroded the Middle Eastern territories. So George Galloway just gave a complete smackdown to that Zionist student. Just like how we saw Norman Finkelstein. Remember that famous clip of Norman Finkelstein? Just complete smack of a Zionist crybaby. And that literally was, you saw there, was a Zionist crybaby. It's amazing that the people that claim to be so anti-woke and, college students shouldn't have safe spaces for people and liberals just got to get over it. If I want to dead name someone, I'll dead name someone. You just got to grow up and deal with it. Facts don't care about your feelings. The minute this gets brought up, holy crap, do they turn into the biggest snowflakes in mankind. They're the ultimate Karens. And what's even worse about a Zionist Karen compared to a liberal Karen is that at least with a liberal Karen, I know what I'm expecting. But for some schmuck to be, I'm for free speech, I want to say whatever I want on college campuses, and then cry to George Galloway because George Galloway is a fierce critic of the Greater Israeli Project, of the Zionist movement, and can accurately see what is happening in front of his eyes. Oh, you're a racist. You're a racist. That young kid said. Again, I didn't realize Israelis and Zionists were a race. I thought it was a religion. Again, that just it falsifies the whole thing. But they want to conflate all of that anyone that critiques them accurately about this gets deemed a anti-Semite, a Jew hater, or a self-hating Jew, as Ben Shapiro would say. All those people are self-hating Jews. You mean the ones that are defiantly going against the onset slaughter of Palestinians, of other Semites? Because how do you think that's going to look for the Jewish population? How do you think that's going to look for the religion of Judaism, that their religion is being taken by the Zionists in bad faith to commit an atrocity? How do you think that's going to look? How do you think that's going to look? So here's another great moment here. So George Galloway mentioned about how there was a person carrying around the Israeli flag, and here it is. Galloway mentioned someone who waved the Israeli flag around. He's referring to another deranged Zionist fanatic who stormed the stage to disrupt the event, and he was also destroyed by him. You probably never heard about it. Only Jordan Peterson's whiny get mainstream headlines. Yeah, Jordan Peterson that says we need guardrails. Again, another hypocrite, another complete goddamn hypocrite, and a suck-up liar to the Zionist cult. Because he got bought out. He's a shill. He's a paid propagandist. He's a liar. And I admired stuff about Jordan Peterson before when he mentions about free speech. But now we can see his true colors. Just like we saw Ben Shapiro. Just like we see a lot of people. These free speech absolutists we now found their weak spot and have turned to the ultimate Karens. Now they're the biggest crybabies in mankind. Even more worse than the liberal crybabies with the blue hair. So now here's George Galloway once again. Just smacked down that one kid, and now here's another one. Another crazed Zionist trying to disrupt his speech. And George Galloway just accurately hammers hard, fact after fact, nailing every point. Like, this is the ultimate mic drop for him.
ערב טוב מר גלווי, אני ישראלי, יש לי אזרחות ישראלית, יש לי דרכון ישראלי. כל המשפחה שלי גרים בארץ, ואתה לא אוהב לדבר עם ישראלים. אתה לא רוצה לדבר עם ישראלים. לא עם ישראלים מהממשלה, אבל עם כל הישראלים. Mr. Galloway.
Don't come any closer to me. Because I'm feeling threatened by you. Don't come any closer to me. What's that up your jumper?
This is an Israeli flag. I'm an Israeli, Mr. Galloway. And you speak...
It's so funny that he's trying to get closer and closer, and George Galloway says, get away from me. It's funny because you hear all these stories about, Jewish students are getting attacked on college campuses, and Zionists don't feel safe because they're being confronted by Palestinian supporters. As you can see, in clear day, with all the coverage of the Palestinian protests and everything between, first of all, there's no police records that Jewish students are getting brutalized by Palestinian supporters. And also the fact that every time I see a video of a Palestine movement with a Zionist person there trying to bash the protests, it's the Zionists that comes forward and harasses them. It's not the Palestinian supporter, it's the Zionists themselves. Why? Because they want to start an argument. They want to get enraged. They want video proof. Because it backs their claim. Oh, this guy is harassing me. No, you came forward. You're the one that wants the harassment. You're the one that wants to start this fight. You're the one trying to engage and poke in people's chests and say, hey, you guy. Palestine supporters and Jew supporters for ending the ceasefire, they're not the ones confronting people. They're doing it peacefully. But it's the Zionists purposely doing that so that they can use that as a measure for feeling that they're getting attacked, even though that is not true. That is not true whatsoever. But here's the rest of this.
Fascists in Beirut. You interview Mr. Ahmadinejad for Press TV.
You're doing yourself a lot of harm here, son.
Yeah. I think you did a lot of harm by not speaking to my friend Elon and having a constructive dialogue with him. And sir, I don't have a question for you, as you can see, because I don't debate with racists. Thank you, sir.
Well, it's funny, the last time I saw that flag was on Saturday. And you can consult innumerable sources on the internet about this. The last time I saw that flag was on Saturday in Bradford, held aloft by the English Defence League. It's there, published in many newspapers, broadcast on many news bulletins, and I think that it's come to something, that England's fascist formation finds the flag of Israel the most appropriate flag to fly.
So, yeah, George Galloway not going to be stymied by a protester, by someone who clearly is just an agitator, a Zionist crybaby, just trying to look for some attention, which is what that guy was doing. I mean, going up on stage, he didn't have a question. He trying to get closer and just holding up a flag. Yeah, he's agitating on purpose. He's aggressively going after George Galloway on purpose. He doesn't have an argument. He doesn't have an argument. He doesn't have a case. But he's doing this that hopefully someone nearby is going to take a picture and go, "Oh my God, George Galloway is harassing me." Well, what's he doing? He's standing there and saying words. Just like I see all the time. Just like I see all the time. It's the Zionists that create their own victimhood. It's not anti-Semitism on the rise. It's them creating the anti-Semitism problems. They're doing this purposely to be the victims, that people feel sorry for them, so that they can use that as emotional support to further their genocide efforts, their ethnic cleansing efforts. And here's just one more of this. This is to wrap this up. In another part of his response, Galloway mentions his hatred of Alistair Campbell, who, for those who don't know him, he was the media propagandist for Tony Blair. Yeah, you remember Tony Blair, the one that lied you into Iraq? That was good friends with George W. Tony Blair that wants digital IDs for England, that wants to surveil you, that wants to turn you into a bunch of suspected terrorists. You're no longer citizens. You're suspected of something, so that's why we got to sneak into your bank account. We got to sneak into your Social Security. We got to sneak into every aspect of your life and treat you like a prisoner. A digital prisoner that has all their information stored into the cloud of the government. That's Tony Blair. That's Tony Blair. And it's still a predominant genocidal warmonger now cheering on Israel. Here's that time George Galloway destroyed him live on the air. So he was on this show here, and George Galloway was asked about Tony Blair and Alistair, whatever his name is, asked about this, and once again, George Galloway nails it right on.
I look forward to the day when Mr. Blair is not in front of establishment stooges, but in The Hague, facing war crimes charges at the International Court. And by the way, his Goebbels, his Lord Haw-Haw, Alistair Campbell, who's got the same blood on his hands, ought to be sitting in the dock alongside him.
All right, you went, just before we go to Alistair Campbell, you went rather further than that, going before a court. You said, would the assassination of Tony Blair by a suicide bomber be morally justified? Yes, it would be. It would be entirely logical and explicable and morally equivalent to ordering the deaths of thousands of innocent people in Iraq, as Blair did. Do you still believe Tony Blair's assassination would be morally justified?
That's not, of course, the whole quote. The whole quote is, if I were an Iraqi whose country had been invaded, whose family had been destroyed, whose house had been destroyed, whose entire life had been destroyed by Tony Blair and George W. Bush, would I regard an assassination of Tony Blair as being morally justified? Of course I would. If the inquiry has no power to command the presence of individuals, the presence of documents that they want to see, if people are not put on oath in the evidence... No, they don't have the documents. Gus O'Donnell refused this week.
The documents, George.
Yes, but we are not allowed to see them.
They have
we, the public, are not allowed to see them. Why? The gentleman has worked it out, as everyone in the land has, because those letters will reveal the craven subservience. You probably wrote them,
no,
actually.
I didn't.
You probably wrote them.
I didn't write them, George.
You wrote the 45 minutes, you wrote the dossier. You wrote the whole sexing up of the whole thing.
Thank you, George. Thank you, George.
You wrote David Kelly's name and gave it to the journalists, which drove him to his death.
Lie.
You wrote plenty of things.
I may have written plenty of things, George.
So that's what we call a strikeout. You got 3 major hits by George Galloway. First with that one kid calling him a racist. That, you know, when you just do that, you automatically just lose your argument. You have no argument at that point when you just blurt something like that. I didn't realize Zionism. I didn't realize being a Zionist was a race of people. I didn't realize that. You learn something new every day. But obviously he lost that argument. George Galloway made some excellent points. Then the guy with the Israeli flag trying to come on to him and trying to agitate him purposely to make him look like the victim. He lost that battle. And then you just saw there on that show there where he said, you know, we don't condone violent acts, so that's not what I'm saying here. But he makes the point that after all the destruction that happened in Iraq and all the destruction that happened in Afghanistan and all the destruction that happens all around the world, done by the United States imperial empire, done by the military-industrial complex, done by the CIA, done by MI6, done by Tony Blair and George W. Bush, there is that kind of sympathy for that individual or for the people within that country that got completely destroyed. There is a bit of that sympathy because of the fact that the military-industrial complex orchestrated this onset invasion of a country that had nothing to do with anything, that we knew in the investigation of 9/11 that it was Saudi Arabia. That's what they claim, but that's further needs to be discussed because all the 9/11 papers obviously have not been released. It's still controversial. There's still unanswered questions. But even from their state, they knew it was Saudi Arabia terrorists. So why were we invading Iraq? Why were we starting invading Iraq and doing it on behest of America and the UK? So, understandably, yes, there is a bit of sympathy. Again, I'm not promoting any violent act. I'm condoning the need for that. But I'm just, what he said there is that there's a bit of sympathy. There's a bit of understanding in the fact that you got your entire cities destroyed. Entire country bellied up because of this heinous invasion that did not tell you the truth, was manufactured on a lie. They told you that Iraq had WMDs. That was completely false. That was completely made up. But they lied to you and scared you, also using 9/11 as a precursor to push people into this outrageous warfare that caused nothing but destruction. And then we continued that war into Afghanistan. And then we continued that into Libya. And then we continued that into Syria. For over 2 decades. And what it looks like to me, now that we're finally learning more about the connection between the United States and Israel, it looks like this was on behest of Israel, not just United States and the military contractors. Obviously, they play a big factor, but it looks like, considering the fact that Bibi Netanyahu was at the White House during that time. He was at the White House saying that we need to go and invade Iraq. He said at the White House, you need to come up with a strategy to go after Afghanistan. You need to come up with strategies to go after Libya, go after Syria, go after Lebanon, go after all these different territories. Now we're going after Iran, which is the final spot on the laundry list that they want to invade, that they want to destroy, that they want to catastrophically take over and decimate those territories. And people still wonder why Middle Eastern countries, why rest of the general world has a unappreciative view of the United States and Israel. Still wonder that? Is it because they truly hate freedom? Is that it? They truly hate freedom and democracy? Or maybe they just see the onset slaughter that this manufactured machine that now is getting trillions of dollars thanks to Donald Trump and Elon Musk for doing that, is now continuously going after country and just mass slaughtering people left, right, and center. That this is not for security. This is not for humanitarian cause. This is not defending anybody. The only thing it's defending is the arbitrary, insane, psychotic, sociopathic oligarchy that abuses and abuses you constantly to the point of your death. That's what's happening here. And George Galloway, God bless him. Thank God he's in now the British Parliament sphere, because the fact of just how amazing a voice that is, a voice like his is, to be in that space. Definitely needed. We need George Galloway here. I like to say it's me, but it's not me. But you need more of those voices.